Hello everyone, my name is Christian, welcome to my hobby blog. Today we are going to discuss our first Vinegar Syndrome January title. Obviously January 2022. I'm talking about, of course, Master of the World. So this movie was pretty surprising with how not awful it was, because a lot of people did not like this movie when this first kind of was shipped out. And I got mine a bit later than the other subscribers, so I was starting to kind of hear reviews. And this one was kind of discussed as really boring, mostly due to the fact that there is no dialogue in this movie. There's an opening narration talking about 200,000 years ago and how the people in this movie, at least, all the cave people, worship the Great Bear. And so they were going. There were a lot of not negative discussions, but kind of disappointed because, I mean, if you look at this cover, it looks pretty awesome, and I think that it's better than a lot of people say it is, because I knew ahead of time that there was no dialogue. I completely understand why there would be complaints about this movie if you went in not knowing that there were just grunting the entire movie. So I really liked the intro to this movie. I'm just going to jump into the movie itself now and then move on with supplements and kind of how I rank. Well, not how I rank it, but how what my attitude would be for this movie if I was not a subscriber. So, and whether I would buy it or not. More on that later. But the intro is your typical Italian intro where it's very synth heavy. And it should be noted that this was made in 1988, I believe. 1983, so it was early 80s. Goblin was definitely around by this point, but the synthesizer heavy soundtrack really helped in making this movie not make me want to fall asleep, because it is a lot of grunting the entire movie. And this movie made me think of the movie Your Future from the, or Hunter from the Future, which is like another Stone Age-ish movie. Except what that movie does, in order to keep it interesting, is that they set it in a futuristic sci-fi world. There's a lot of different reveals in regards to that, but they mix it up is kind of the point. And so, in this movie, we get your very basic premise that there's not much you can do with this type of setting, with cavemen and cave people. And so our main character is Bog. We don't really get an intro for him. Things just happen throughout this movie, which I think is another major complaint that people had about this movie. But I didn't think it detracted from the movie at all, having no introductions. It was more like a fly on the wall in terms of watching these different tribes of cave people ambushing and invading other tribes. And then our main character, Bog, who, on the description that I read during the unboxing video, it talks about how he wanted to take over the world, and I did not get that impression. He's definitely worshipped as the movie goes along more and more, and especially once he begins using a language, not like English or anything, but just kind of an ancient language, I think is what the subtitle describes it. But this movie is very, I guess, suspension of disbelief, or at least disconnecting your mind from your hardcore analyzing side, because throughout the entire movie I was mildly interested in what was going on, watching these cannibalistic cavemen attacking people, decapitating them, eating their brains, which was a really funny kind of thing the supplement kind of discussed, which I'll go into later. There's a part where wolves attack our main tribe that Bog is interacting with, and the wolves are played by like German shepherds or something. It's not like a full-on wolf, but they're trained, they're domesticated. So when our very scary attack scene happens, the visuals do not match the music at all. The music is very like, scary, tense, and all that. And on screen, you see the cavemen wrestling with the wolves, and all the wolves are like wagging their tails and smiling, and the tongue is like hanging out. They're having just the best time. But there's a lot of pretty fun events throughout the movie. It is very predictable on what is going on. I think the most interesting part is, of course, our main lady here, who is showing her ass. She is actually a love interest in the movie, which I was not expecting. I was wondering what that was, that little artwork that I showed just now. I was very curious what that scene was, whether it even was a scene, because a lot of Italian movies, they just slap random shit on the cover. But that was not random. That actually happened in the movie. After our main character's, I guess, original love interest is kind of brutally killed during the movie, this woman that I just showed kind of becomes the new love interest and kind of shows for the first time female agency, which the director's son, who was on the supplement, who was doing the interview, was kind of saying what that scene meant. I didn't get that really at all. I felt like the director wanted a sexy scene, and that was his opportunity to get some nudity in his movie, because there's no male nudity. So I don't know. It's I think the son was a bit free to say whatever he wanted without having his father there to kind of keep things, factual. But we're introduced to Bog, kind of, by him having a leg wound. And he's kind of stumbling through the mountains while, hyenas, eagles, crows, ravens, mountain lions, every animal in the book is like kind of following him along, waiting for him to die. And our first female love interest chews up some herbs and puts it into his leg, and that's kind of her like knack, is being able to use medicine. And so slowly they kind of start to trust each other. She just kind of heals him, because why not? And there's like a family of cave people that we are watching while he's slowly getting healed and becoming more productive in the movie in terms of the plot. But there's a cave family, and another group comes by and is like, hey, like, we can share meat together. Can I eat your meat? And they're like, fuck no. And they attack the visiting cave tribe. And the cave tribe gains the upper hand and brutally kills them all, including the child. And they, of course, start eating them, because that's what, I guess, cave people do in this movie. And we get a pretty fun scene of Bog kind of following along with this medicine woman, cave woman, and she and him see the sun setting. And we see like a montage of all the different cave people freaking out, because during the opening narration by some British guy, he's kind of like, the rising and setting of the sun were god level events or something like that. And so that kind of comes back. There's a huge wind or lightning storm that causes a big wildfire, where we get to see a bear, which was actually the only time a costume was used for the main antagonist, which is this bear. And eventually rain comes and they're all very happy. We get a showdown with the bear, and it's making Chewbacca noises the entire time. And you can obviously see its its muzzle, its little covering, so it doesn't bite the actors. And that's about all I have to say about the main movie. There's not much happening. It's exactly what you think it is. I think the restoration is absolutely incredible. It looked really good. But we're going to move on to the supplement. I only watched the one interview. There's a 40-minute interview with the director's son, who, again, I think he was putting a lot more meaning to this movie than the director intended to. Because there was a lot of little things where I was like, we don't know that. We don't know if the director wanted to handle this thing the way that his son is claiming. And a lot of it is kind of having to do with this medicine woman character. Because, I don't know, you'll have to watch it and kind of judge for yourself. But there were a few times during the interview where I didn't follow what he was saying. But apparently the director was a pretty big shot in terms of Italian directors. He was mostly a producer throughout his entire career, and also helped distribute other movies. And his son talks about how Alejandro Jodorowsky came to Italy by his dad, distributing the movie throughout different theaters in Italy. And he talked about other cult films, which I don't really remember. But he was kind of a huge influence on a lot of people by making a lot of hard-to-find movies freely available. So apparently the movie Quest for Fire was the original Stone Age exploitation movie. That's what I'm just going to call it. But Master of the World was written by some new kind of talent in Italy who wanted to make like a serious follow-up to this movie, to Quest for Fire. And right before the movie got greenlit, the director of this movie worked on a very similar whatever it's called, a Stone Age exploitation film, except they had dialogue in there, and they actually had a plot line, which this movie kind of has a plot line, but apparently he did something called like Iron Master or Iron something, but he didn't have his name in really any movies as a director. But for this movie, he wanted to be the director for this. But apparently the writer of this movie was likened to Pier Paolo Pasolini, another great Italian director. Apparently he was just the nicest guy ever. I mean, watching the Salo supplements on the Criterion edition, Pier Paolo Pasolini seems like a really cool guy. Seems very nice, very intelligent. I personally love Salo, just to kind of go off track here. It is a huge tragedy that he was assassinated after making Salo, because it was so depraved and just really fucked up. But in my opinion, it is a piece of art. But originally he was going, after Salo, he was going to continue his trilogy of death, which is what people talk about, is that he had done the trilogy of life, which includes Arabian Nights, the Canterbury Tales, and one other, which I cannot really remember off the top of my head. I haven't seen them either. I've just seen Salo and Teorema. But he was going to continue on, and theories abound about what the final two movies would have been based off of Salo and how just vulgar, disgusting, sickening all of those scenes are in that movie and what the subject matter was. And the prevailing theory that I have read is that he was going to tackle Dante's Inferno, which, what a tragedy that he got killed, because I would have loved to have seen his version of Dante's Inferno. But to go back, the writer was just really nice. But in the original script, he wrote the main antagonist as a group of wolves rather than a bear. And the director's son talks about how they went to a zoo to just kind of do basic research about having wolves on set and how they act and what you can do to kind of keep things under control. And he said that the zookeepers threw in a bunch of live chickens into the pen, and before they did that, everyone on the crew were like, oh, these wolves act just like dogs. They're very docile and very, they're not violent. But then they threw the live chickens in, and they said, or the director's son kind of talked about how it was one of the scariest things he'd ever seen. They just snapped and just completely butchered all the chickens, and he heard a producer or someone else kind of say, like, how about we have a bear instead? I feel like that would be a much better choice. And everyone agreed. So they ended up doing a bear instead. And the bear they had is actually super well trained. It was so well trained that my brain just assumed that it was a costume the entire movie. But as the movie goes on and you see the bear more and more, you kind of realize that's a real bear. And so you watch the behind the scenes, and they had a trainer. Everyone talked really nicely about the bear and his handler. And there was a really funny story that the director's son talked about, where they were kind of setting up a shot for the first introduction of the bear, where the bear was going to be walking along a river, and a tribe of cavemen see the bear, and they all went away. Well, apparently they set up the camera, and before they started shooting, the bear started sprinting at everybody, including the camera. And so everyone ran away, like, oh shit, we're about to get fucking mauled by a bear. And then, like, they ran away for like a minute or so, just trying to, fight for their lives. And then they turned around and they saw that the bear, like, was kind of being jolly and, like, in the river and splashing around. And they had no other issues the entire shoot with a grizzly bear. Or a brown bear, I think it is. But, that was a really funny story that he talked about, because in my brain, I would never have a bear near me, ever. I think they're majestic creatures. I would love to have, like, the most domesticated bear of all time, because they seem like very great cuddle buddies. But I would never, ever be with a bear, because I know they can never be really domesticated. But, there's a scene in this movie, just to kind of move on to my last point. Actually, before I move on to that last point, there's one piece of note that I had that was really funny, kind of in relation to the story about the maybe killer bear running after everyone. There was a baby cub that was with the bear the entire movie. I don't know why they had it. They didn't really explain it. There's no baby cub in the movie that I remember. There was about a 10-minute stretch where I just stopped paying attention. I didn't really care for about 10 minutes and then got interesting again. But they talk about how the cub was just constantly fucking with people the entire shooting schedule. They talk about how one technician was like deathly afraid of bears, and the cub somehow picked up on that and was constantly heckling him. And that was just another funny story that they talked about. But my final point here is that there's a scene where they have a really disgusting looking feast. And by feast, I mean they decapitated the enemy's heads. They cut off the top here all the way around, and they lifted it, and they cooked brains. And then they ate them. I was curious how they did it. I assumed they were using some type of animal meat, and they were. But the nasty thing is that they purposely sealed it up in like a whatever head, a prosthetic head, and then left it out in the sun all day while they were shooting other stuff. And so when they were ready to film the scene of all the cavemen eating, this head, they used lamb's meat and allowed the meat to go rotten and just all this different stuff. And when they broke open the heads, because there was like a layer where it kind of kept the meat smell, I guess, contained, they broke open the head. Excuse me, hiccups. And they said, or at least the director's son said that like everybody on crew about threw up because they broke open the head and all this rotten meat smell just flowed over everyone. And it sounded really disgusting, them talking about that scene. And watching that scene before knowing that, I was kind of like, ew, I don't know. I don't think I would have done this if I was an actor. But, yeah, I think that's really all I have to say about kind of the supplements of what is in it. I think his son embellished quite a few points. But there was another interview on this release that I didn't get around to. I thought that I had the info necessary to kind of make a review about it. But I think I liked this movie enough. I wouldn't say I liked it a lot. I just liked it. The most important question to me for everyone out there is, would I have bought this if I wasn't a subscriber? I don't know. I think on its own, the movie is fun. It's kind of like your Hunter from the Future. It's pretty good. The effects are great. The restoration's great. This movie is very hard to find outside the Vinegar Syndrome. It was never released on DVD, never released on Blu-ray until this release. So it's really hard to find. It's a weird time capsule type of movie. Watching the supplements really makes this set better, in my opinion. I really like that interview and kind of learning about this weird movie. It's very unique. There's some really fun fights with the bear, which I see it on the back here that I didn't really mention. But if you're a supplement type of person, I think this is a really great release. There's even more supplements for me to watch, and just off the one I watched, that could have been the only one. I would have been happy. But for those who don't really watch supplements, it depends how much money you are willing to spend, because I probably would wait for a Black Friday sale. I doubt this movie would ever go out of print, in my opinion, especially in the standard edition, because some of the releases do go out of print. But I liked it. I just don't know what else to say. I'm happy I have it. It's not the worst. There are a whole lot worse movies from Vinegar Syndrome that you could watch than this. So I think that's all that I will say today. Thank you all for watching, and let me know what you think about this movie, if you've seen it, or whether I am giving you guys a good idea of what this movie is, and whether it makes you want to watch it or not. Again, thank you for watching.